Hello, everybody. It's good to see you tonight. Welcome to the breach. I know the last time it's going to be hard to top the first four volumes of text out of hundreds, but it was really exciting to do that for everybody. And tonight's going to be a little nutty because I'm going to foretell the future. I know with everything that's happening, but especially with the downstream effects of J6, I'm going to talk about that. But I am going to talk about the absolutely horrific shooting in Minnesota of Miss Good. And I'm going to tell you what's going to happen next. You guys are like, how could you do that, Denver? How in the heck can you tell what's going to happen next? And I can do that because I have a book that helps me with that, The Breach, which does foretell the future. So I'm pretty excited about this. And again, it's good to see everybody on a Friday night. I know the last time we had thousands, but we'll see how this goes now. I hope I hooked up everything correctly because it was a little bit difficult. So I want to dedicate this to the moms. I think it's pretty exciting. Um, and the reason I'm doing that is everything that's been going on, but I know that the moms really are the bedrock, the backbone of families. Now I know dads are great. I'm a dad. But I also know that this is a really good time to talk about not only what's going to happen in the future so you know what to do with your families, but also to spread this amongst your network. And also maybe to engage your families in discussion when I talk about what's going to happen. And the first question I want to ask you is how do you talk to people? If you think about how you communicate with people, how do you do it? Do you use it? Do you go through signal chats? Do you use text message? Do you use Facebook? Do you use private messages? Do you use DMs? Do you have WhatsApp? Do you like encrypted chats? How do you actually communicate? And I think that's something that you're going to want to think about as I'm going over what the future holds for everybody tonight. So if you do use encrypted chats, you have to think about right now as the future is coming is who else is using encrypted chats. And I want to start that the people that are looking at the elections of 26 and 28, they're not using regular text messages anymore. They're using encrypted chats. And those people are planning how to manipulate elections. If you think about the threats of the stolen election in January 6th, again, this book outlines that and how they went about it. The first thing they did they had to have a plan, and that plan started in 2016 with Roger Stone, but it progressed when 2020, when they knew they were losing with their polling as soon as I would say August or September of 2020, they had to have a plan. And that plan was how do you manipulate the voting systems, the lies? How do you come up with foreign interference? And are there any legal documents to actually do that? So right now, and why I can tell the future, I do know, and I can tell everybody here that there are so many people planning how they're going to either manipulate, lie, or I would say present radicalized conspiracy theories to try to get in front of the 26 and 28 elections. Because right now with polling, I think the Democrats take 4 dozen seats. I'm going to start off, I was funny. My first prophetic announcement, well, sort of when you're talking about how you talk to people in the encrypted chats. And by the way, you know how I know that they learned their lessons? Because I was in the depositions for January 6th. And I also know the congressional members themselves who were planning with Trump's team also were going to encrypted chats, and those were congressmen. So I want to read something from Scott Perry's texts. Oh, you didn't know you were going to get this special thing tonight, did you? Right? How do I know that bad things are happening and we can't see them right now? Here we go. So on December 28th, 2020, Scott Perry is sending text messages to Mark Meadows. And they're talking about vetoes and overrides, but they're also talking about the Italian satellite conspiracy theories. Woo, crazy. And Jeff Clark, if anybody knows that weirdo. So they have all this going on, right? And they're wanting to work with the FBI to go after this conspiracy theories. So I want to read this to you real quick. So they're talking about the bills, and I want you guys need to brace yourselves. This is from Scott Perry to Mark Meadows, December 28th. Leadership recommended a yes vote on a veto override. The president should know where he stands with these folks. Like, okay, some votes going on as everything's happening with veto overrides. Now, this is December 28th. It says in January 6th. He goes, we are voting now. Please check your email for additional voting group times. Veto override, ranking member Thornberry, who I know Mac really well, recommends a yes vote. I remember all that. Mark, I sent you a note on Signal. So now you see things are starting to actually flip because here's what happens. Mark, need to revisit US 18-951. We're talking about security memos now. It was not explained well yesterday. I think I can add important context. Check your signal, please. Next text. Why can't we just work with the Italian government? Now, you guys are like, well, Denver, what does that mean? If you guys remember the Italian satellite scenario, that means that they wanted to actually utilize national intelligence assets to work with the Italian government to try to track down how the votes were changed by satellites. I swear to God, that's what happened. And that's how crazy all of this is. So when I'm foretelling the future, past performance is indicative of future performance. Secondly, tonight I was going to talk about escalation based on what happened, the shooting, the ICE shooting. And I'm going to be very specific about this. I'm not going to try to be emotional, very specific. Based on that shooting, my guess was there was going to be escalation. Guess what? You guys, have anybody been watching the news? They sent 100 more ICE agents to Minnesota. As I was going on air, I'm like, you know what, mate? Let me check before I'm making prophetic pronouncements, right? Before that might have already happened. And I could not believe it. I walked around the corner. I'm like, well, there goes one of my prophetic announcements. It's an automatic escalatory nature of this. They got what they wanted. They got protests. And that's why I was talking about today. And I want to tell you guys about the polarization pendulum. And that's what I put out there is that when you're looking at violence, there can be reciprocal violence. If there's a plan to incite the public so that they have a rationale to do something that's dire or oppressive, say the Insurrection Act or the Alien Sedition Act, whatever, Aliens Enemies Act. If they have any of that in their wheelhouse, they're going to want to provoke. And if you're looking at January 6th, the same thing. Provoke, 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 provoke. They want that reaction. And I want to ask a question of everybody who's listening right now. After what I know I've already probably shocked the world here with what I'm telling you, but it's going to get worse, but then it'll get better as I'm telling the future. What happened if security at the Capitol wasn't absolute shite? What if Capitol Police had engaged those protesters with weapons? You'd have had martyrs cross the line. Now, they tried to make Ashley Babbitt into a martyr, right? By the way, I know exactly where she was shot. That's the Speaker's lobby. And that's where they do protect the congressional members. And if you remember on the other side of when he shot Ashley Babbitt, they actually had barricaded the doors. Think about how ridiculous the Ashley Babbitt conspiracy theories are from the far right that somehow she's a hero. It's an awful shooting. I don't want to see any veteran radicalized to do something that's stupid. But it was a good shooting because she was trying to break into the Speaker's lobby after repeated warnings. So, what would have happened? That was that escalatory nature, that radicalization, that violence that you want. There's always a repeat or reciprocal violence around that. So here's what you're going to see. You're going to see some very bad things from people who claim to be on the left now. And the things that make my hair stand on end when you're talking about reciprocal violence, I'm going to give you guys some actual examples of this, right? Is that when they say we are Hamas, and as soon as somebody self-identifies or they say we are Hamas, even somebody like me, right, who's been in the West Bank, I have incredible experience in the Middle East. You know, I automatically like that's a bad idea because automatically people like me, military, things like that is an enemy. The other thing is to kill ICE. If anybody's chanting anything like that or something like that, that's a reaction they're expecting and something that allows them to be escalatory in nature. You're allowed to be angry. You are. I'm angry. You're allowed to do all of these things. You're allowed to protest. You know, you can, maybe it's not safe. The thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to show your emotion in a way that it self-identifies as a target and saying things that are ludicrous because that plays right into their hands. If you're going to confront ICE, you have to confront ICE in this way. And hear me out. If I'm confronting ICE, I'm going to listen, guys, I appreciate your service and the fact that you're law enforcement. Respect that. What I don't respect, though, you being in this neighborhood, that is not something that you know is copacetic. This is ludicrous. You guys should not be here. And I think with that kind of swarm, that's what you need. It's almost this steely-eyed resolve that does not cross the line into using hyperbolic rhetoric or inflammatory rhetoric that could self-identify as enemies or give somebody or authorities like the craziness that you see out there. Remember, these are the people, they're the same people behind January 6th, everybody in government. And past performance is indicative of future performance. That's why the breach is prophetic, because you can read it and look at how it happened and look what's happening now. And there's parallels, and there's going to be, because the leopards don't change their spots. Boy, I got some cliches going on tonight. Escalatory behavior already happened. I feel bad. You're like, Dan, of course, but I knew I was in front of it. And I told my wife earlier today, I'm like, ICE is going to be going into other cities. They're going to be cascading into Minnesota. Now they have rationalization to do it. Minnesota gave them that rationalization. Of course, they should be protesting. But if you're saying kill ICE, things like that, that's going to backfire, right? That's reciprocal violence. That's also, when you look at it, and I actually have the reports, what we're doing, I've been talking to those helping me, and they're amazing human beings. I'm going to start putting the source documents up on a website that I talk about every night, so you have that as actual ammunition when you're talking to people who don't know what they're talking about, or they're using alternate facts. They're using the Kellyanne Conway argument method, right? But it is the polarization pendulum. And the thing that bothers me is that violence, if that bubbles up on the left or even center, or people who just hate ICE or whatever, or they're so angry and they're so overwhelmed with emotion, that emotion can create things like the Insurrection Act, as I said, or the Alien Enemies Act. Here's what else you're going to have to look for. New executive orders. So when January 6th, when they were trying to steal the election back, and by the way, listen to what I'm saying here. They were trying to overthrow a free and fair election. If you're trying to overthrow an election, you're trying to take that election. That's a pretty good definition of a coup-like activities, huh? So they're going to try to actually start generating new executive orders. The executive order that they tried to maneuver and manipulate with was something called Executive Order 13848. If you look it up, you'll see that that executive order is about foreign interference in elections. How do I know that executive order? Because a good friend of mine helped author that, Miles Taylor, if people know about Miles. EO 13848 wasn't to actually just create some kind of catch-all where somebody could just say, hey, there's foreign interference. But if you remember about Scott Perry and Italian satellites, oh, you're like, Den, Jesus, you're bringing it together. It's incredible. Think about Scott Perry and Italian satellites. You're also talking about Venezuela and Chavez. Boy, back to Venezuela again. And now you're starting to see why Donald Trump has such a directed mission to go after Venezuela, because part of his Venezuela bizarre neuroses is he still believes the crazy conspiracy theories about Chavez. I know. Pretty nuts, huh? That's why the downflow on J6 is so dangerous, because it showed that violence can be used as policy. And if anybody's telling you that violence is a good policy outcome, or that violence helps with policy outcomes, you need to push away from that person, because that person is nuts. Executive orders. You're hearing it here first. There will be new executive orders, or there are going to be new NISPMs, right? So, and you guys are like, Dan, what the heck is a NISPM, right? So these are presidential memorandums, national security presidential memorandums. During January 6th, there was a NISPM made called NISPM 13 based on Executive Order 13848. You're like, oh God, Dan, these are a lot of freaking acronyms. Executive Order 13848. However, Patrick Byrne, the billionaire, on his Deep Capture website had posted all of Sidney Powell's new executive orders. Yeah, guys, they were building executive orders to simply take the election, because they were going to say all this foreign interference, Chinese servers, German server farms, Italian satellites, right? Chavez, broken algorithms, Dominion, Smartmatic, Chinese watermarked ballots. Remember the text messages of Jenny Thomas? All that stuff. The reason it was all foreign, guys, you need to listen to me. The reason it was all foreign is because they were literally going to stop the election. And that's why they were using Mike Pence, saying that there were foreign assets. Every congressional member who voted to object to the electors believed bullshit, were cynical, were liars, were trying to overturn the Constitution based on fantasies and superstition, radicalized by the president and the people working around him, and then tried to in enforcement mechanisms through white nationalists or through groups like the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers. I know. Pretty crazy. So what do you think is going to happen in 2026 or 2028? You're going to see a downflow of new executive orders and new NISPMs and SPMs. So let me read something out of the breach for you. How do I know? Because I'm the one that found them, guys. Deep Capture website, Patrick Byrne, deepcapture.com. I think it's still up. Go look at it. And you should be calling people right now like, oh my God, right? There's a guy named Phil Waldron, Colonel Phil Waldron, who built a 37-page briefing, PowerPoint briefing on all the states where the votes were stolen. I'm putting that because they're lies. They even made up tables, right, where Chinese servers were sucking votes and changing them. It's bullshit, right? So, by the way, I'm going to put everything together for you really quick. In his email to Meadows, following up their conversation, I'm going to talk about Phil Waldron, about PSYOPs. They were talking about PSYOPs and using executive orders. It says page 207 in my book, right? He said, Waldron said he was sending in a national asset tasking request to support Executive Order 13848 was about foreign interference, made up foreign interference. What is a national asset tasking request? We have the email from some rando colonel that owns a distillery, by the way, right? Some rando colonel who briefed the president, right, that they should do national asset tasking requests. What's that mean? Satellites and also all national intelligence resources to identify the foreign sources and to stall the election. I knew what that language meant. I wrote this. Tasking can happen under the auspices of other intelligence agencies, but foreign interference, EO 13848, in the cyber realm falls under certain authority given to the National Security Agency. They wanted NSA to take over. And you're like, Denver, I've heard this before. Where? Oh, yeah. There was another 3-star Air Force general who said that NSA, using a actual classified, I'm not even going to say it anymore because I don't even want to put it out there, using a classified capability was changing votes. NSA was changing votes for Biden. I know. Huh? It's in here. This seemed to be the state of an effort to claim foreign interference and launch the executive order. How do I know there's going to be more NISPMs and it's going to hurt you guys and you're going to see it come out? Executive orders and NSPMs. Write it down in your pad. Spread it to your friend groups. This is going to happen. There's going to be new documentation from the executive order that comes out and makes up some weird thing that there's far left groups funding insurrections in specific areas and that those areas need to have suspended votes or something that it's going to be something nuts. I can tell the future. Playbook, right? So another document meant for Trump also caught my eye. The Washington Post reported in February 2022 that there was a memo of uncertain origin dated December 18th, 2020, entitled Counter Election Fraud NISPM. Remember NISPM, NSPM, a presidential memorandum request. Now, this should scare the hell out of you because the 3 people that are doing this, right? I know who they are because these are the guys that were behind the Muslim Brotherhood conspiracy theories for Obama. Same guys like Michael Del Rosso, who ran against me for Congress. Yeah, I know them. I know these nutters, man. Yeah, I know a lot because they like to talk and they also don't hide their stuff very well. So that's the other thing too. These big time spies think there's something. So here are the people, right? Look up Frank Colon. Frank, and last name spelled colon, Colon. Look him up. Your mind will explode. Richard Higgins, a former National Security Council staffer, somebody who was interviewed by Jenny Thomas. Hello, right? He died of COVID. He didn't think it was real and died from it. And then Michael Del Rosso, a former consultant to U.S. Special Operations Command, true, who wrote a book that actually had misspellings on the cover. Yes, somebody laughed colon. It is correct. So here's what the memo suggested to run targeted inquiries of NSA raw signals. Okay, guys, I was NSA. And now you're like, oh, Denver can even talk about National Security Agency. You have to have a special clearance level to get raw signals. Most signals that analysts use are processed first. There's multiple layers of processing you have to do before you have releasable intelligence. So there you go. So what they're asking for is actually 3 randos are asking for raw NSA intelligence, right? And implied that this access would help them find evidence that would be sufficient to allow military remedies. That means the military taking over voting machines. Playbook, same thing, I would say could happen. And when you're looking at Venezuela, think about all of this, right? It's a downflow of J6. The violence against Good is a downflow of J6. The very individuals for ICE are utilizing, again, fantasies or a declared war on something. Go look at George Carlin's incredible stand up about us declaring war on anything inside the country except a war on that, war on drugs, war on that. Now it's a war on immigrants. Whether it's contrived or not, it doesn't really matter. That war allows them specific types of activities that they think they can rationalize. Same thing, guys. Same thing again. So you're like, well, gosh, what the heck else, right? So the next thing you need to look for, right? And I know this is a little bit nuts. So remember what I've said so far. There's going to be new executive orders, new memorandums, right? New conspiracy theories about who's running all this in the cities. There's probably going to be an insurrection act, more threats on insurrection act or alien enemies acts. All that's going to happen downstream because that's what Trump wanted in 2020 and 2021. Okay. All that's going to happen. And listen, as an intelligence officer, I'm never going to tell you guys it's 100%, but I'm telling you right now, it's 70 to 80%, right? That you're going to see some combination of this, right? As we go downstream, right? The thing that's going to scare everybody is what if he says the military or the intelligence community, the Department of Defense are taking over voting in certain areas? How does that work? It's not hard. Who's going to stop them? And I think that's the thing that, as we're going through here, right? And as we're looking at all this, I want all of you to think about what you need to do when it comes up to 2026. Now, what else is going to happen? Let's go into the future. Violence escalates, right? My biggest fear is that you're going to have killings of ICE agents, and I say outside of normal operations, where they're actually targeted. So if that happens, and it's something that scares me, when you're talking about the uptick of violence on both sides, you're talking about a bubble or a balloon, almost a mushroom cloud, right? Where you have this specific type of escalation based on this left-right thing. Think about, when you're looking on the net and you're looking at people everybody's all of a sudden video experts, right? With the shooting that happened. I mean, guys, I know people on the DHS advisory board that served. I mean, I know police chiefs all across the country. People on my advisory board, right, are part of DHS or FBI and everything like that. These are really solid individuals that aren't in this Trump orbit. And of course, they're gonna talk to me, and they're gonna talk to people that I know, and they're gonna say, Denver needs to know that this was a bad shooting. And of course it is, right? It's really difficult to rationalize the shooting. I don't want you screaming, though. The fact that she died is so brutally awful, I can't hardly get my arms around it. But you cannot lose the bubble. Don't lose the bubble. Don't scream. Don't put stupid shit down. Don't put stupid stuff on signs. Don't make yourself a target, but you can still protest and get out there if that's what you want to do. What I would rather you do, besides protesting, is to get very involved in elections now. You can text and tweet, great. You know what? This sucks. Great. That doesn't do anything. Jumping on social media doesn't do anything. It doesn't. To express your deepest hurts or angers, of course you can, but that's not action, right? That's emoting. Action is actually identifying the people you want to support that are facts-based and data-based. That's action. Hope is not a viable course of action. And you can spread that everywhere. I'm getting a little bit jazzed up myself. The polarization pendulum. Also, I was the author on QAnon. We did the initial report on January 9th. I also did a QAnon report in December 15th with the Network Contagion Research Institute. We talked about reciprocal violence, but also about the polarization pendulum, about how government activities, when they increase, radicalization or polarization increases between groups. They want to hurt each other. We use this anti-Semitism as the example. But this can go with the left using ACAB, all cops are bastards, or 1619, or whatever they want to use as memes, and the far right using their own memes, right? And then you have memetic warfare, you have an escalation, you have memes being used to actually do mission command or control, telling people where to go to actually influence violence. So there's all this coming, right? So as you're looking at this also, what you need to do is your head on the swivel is you don't know where the violence would come from if you're in those type of situations, left or right. And again, you're probably like, Dan, you got to say who's the worst. Listen, the right's in a hold my beer moment. Don't get me wrong. But it doesn't take away the threat of reciprocal violence, right? If those people are that worked up. And it also, they already have their command structures and control structures. If people have been on the net and you already have these type of specific, individuals, right, that are anarchists, or, you have, those kind of individuals, that stuff can happen. And that's what I'm worried about, is that we're going to have violence against authorities, and that's going to give rationalization for the federal government to enact very dire and oppressive measures against that specific area, which is something we already know. We gamed this in 2024 with multiple think tanks. I played President Trump on one of these tanks, and I played Mike Johnson in the other. And I have proven to not only be right, I wasn't even aggressive enough, and I was a very aggressive president in these war games because I know him. I know what a narcissistic personality is, but I also know that there really is no balance to his decision making. That balance was evident January 6th. Again, downstream, past performance is indicative of future performance. Hope is not a viable course of action. Watch out for executive orders. Watch out for national security presidential memorandums that try to put the military, the IC, or some other weird authority over the elections. Watch out for violence that against ICE or other authorities that are outside normal operating. I hope somebody doesn't go up to a vehicle and do something awful or do something like that, because that is going to cause an issue that's very hard to stop going into the midterms. Watch out for those directed activities. That's going to happen. Also, I tell you, whatever's going to come out with elections is going to be nuts, because if you look at Heather Honey, who's in charge of the elections, or you look at Cleta Mitchell's back, you look at Sidney Powell starting to, make waves again, these people also resurface. The other thing you got to look at, and when your eyes really got to get wide, is when you see these people actually talking in public about stolen elections, and that 2020 was still stolen, and they think 2026 is going to be stolen. That's what you got to watch out for. Also, you got to watch out for Republican jurisdictions, or largely right jurisdictions, trying to actually suppress the vote. For instance, when you look at, I hope you guys are paying attention to what's going on with the Postal Service. If I may do another thing here, it's going to get harder and harder to vote by mail. And when you look at the rules that they changed on the postmark for mail, they made it very difficult to get the mail in for people who are trying to mail in last minute for votes. They're trying to suppress the vote. Remember, the only way the Republicans can win right now is through subtraction, not addition. If you think about that, you can think about what their actual motives are going to be and how they're going to do it. They have to subtract votes. They have to suppress votes. They have to make it harder to vote. They have to make people not want to vote through negative campaigns. They have to spread disinformation, like on Miss Good. That's what they have to do. Again, it's right here. That's what's going to happen. And now, again, I'm not 100%. I would say if I was doing a command brief to my commanding general, I'd say, sir, these are the first courses of action. You'd say, Denver, what's the percentages? I want to say it's over 6 and 10. Because if I'm wrong, I can go, well, I did give it a 40% chance of being wrong, as you guys know. Why did I dedicate it to moms tonight? I hope this helped. And if you could tell me in the comments, I can actually see them on the right-hand side. I'm sort of alone and unafraid tonight. It's Friday night. I'm not going to ask Doug to get on here and monitor everything. But I can see your comments. I have an incredible display right here in front of me, a massive one. I have a camera in my studio. I have materials here. I got hard materials over here. I have my notes section here. I have my reports here. I actually have a complete command center here. But there is a reason that I wanted to talk to the moms tonight. You're the baseline. And I'm not trying to listen. There's great dads, stay-at-home dads, great. Everything's great. But it's still moms, right? Moms love their kids. I mean, I look at the way My wife with the children, she's just insanely incredible. I don't have that capability. I wish I did. I don't know how she does it. She gives more and gives more. I think I'm giving more, but she's giving more. She cares more. She loves more. And if that's not the same with everybody, that's fine. But I know moms come to me a lot. Yeah, they got strong, great, strapping husbands. I could take what I'm good at is analysis because I was trained by the United States military, the National Security Agency, Joint Special Ops or Joint Special Projects. Also went to pretty good colleges. Had to be a CEO of technology companies and Department of Defense intelligence community support companies. Um, tracked bad guys from 1999 to 2011 at a level that I don't think a lot of people had the opportunity to do using data or bombs or computer network operations, cyber operations, special access programs, special technical operations, specific types of aircraft stuff. Um, yeah, no, it's great. I'm looking at Eric Hopewell joint statement from DOJ, DOD, DHS, DNI, FBI, NSA, and CISA on ensuring security of 2020 elections, National Security Agency, Social Security Services, press release view. Fantastic. Go look at that. But if you guys know, and I'm glad you reminded me, and I forgot to say this, you guys know CISA, FBI. If you guys go look up, all of the cybersecurity and foreign interference intelligence agencies have been defunded. That means they can say anything they want. That's why I'm telling you that there's going to be documentation that comes out that's going to make your hair catch on fire. I have not read Foundations of Geopolitics by Dugan. Everybody wants me to, and I should, and I'm sorry. And I'm glad that popped up. Um, so, by the way, as far as adult kids stifling, I get it. I've had massive family issues based on Trump or based on misunderstandings like that, of things that I never expected. And I want you guys to use me as a resource. The thing is, I know that there's big podcasts out there, and there's big shows, right, where they have the same people recirculating all the time. Yeah, they don't know shit. They just don't. It's great that they have big opinions and they emote and love it. It doesn't get anywhere. I need you guys to take action, right? And that's supporting candidates, right? It's giving of resources when you can. And I know it's hard. It's hard out there. When it comes to the moms, it's making sure that they're not caught up in some weirdness. Okay, weirdness, last thing. Why this is dedicated to the moms. If there's a book that you guys should read, like, listen, there's some things about this guy that gives me the heebie jeebies because I think he's full of shit in some things, but not all things. And it's Mindfuck. It's by Christopher Wiley. It's about the Cambridge Analytica and the plot to break America. Okay. So when you're talking about radicalization, you're talking about where it's coming from and things like that. You guys have heard of John Bolton, right, the ambassador, and the fact is he's been going against Trump lately, and everybody's like, "All right, go Bolton, yay!" There are tripwires to knowing a little too much. Okay. Oh gosh, I hope I didn't lose my spot. I did not. So he's writing about where all the money is coming from, right? Cambridge Analytica, right? Where is the money coming from? And he goes, but eventually, and I'm reading now, quote, I couldn't ignore what was right in front of my eyes. Weird PACs started showing up. A PAC is a political action committee. The super PAC of future National Security Advisor John Bolton paid Cambridge Analytica more than $1 million to explore how to increase militarism in American youth. Bolton was worried that millennials were a morally weak generation that would not want to go to war with Iran or other evil countries. And you're like, well, Denver, why did you pick that one paragraph out of the whole book, Mindfuck and the Breach? Is because there's a downstream effect, just like from January 6th, on the echo chambers and social media that's out there. When you're looking at polarization, when you're looking at reciprocal violence, when you're looking at all of this, you need to realize that money is the driver behind this. And people that you think, maybe have turned the corner, what weirdo would pay $1 million through a PAC for millennial youth to be more militarized. This stuff bothers me, guys. I read too much, been in Congress, been on the committee. I've tracked really bad guys. My team has tracked really bad guys. Um, I've had guns stuck in my chest. I've had a hell of a life. There's no way ever I'm going to be the darling of anything, media, any of that shit. Man, I really don't care. What I hope is people just tune in to get facts and data, to look at the source data that you guys can utilize to do what you need to do. So I'm going to do, I'll get a website going and put these during these cycles, during these episodes, the exactly type of sourcing that you're doing. The worst thing to do is to put your head in the sand. Second worst thing to do is to emote instead of act. We're in a very specific sort of tipping point here. And I wish I could just come and hug you all and say, listen, bad stuff's coming. The thing is, there's always the overreach, which happened in January 6th. And for a moment, for a brief, shining moment, we had Republicans going against their own party. You had Republicans following my lead for a brief, shining moment, right? But you know what happened? They wanted to win more than support their constituents. And service has become a political career, which has become a craven cult or a craven belief system or a craven followership to an individual who has no moral compass. When that happens, when you have incompetence mixed with ignorance, mixed with cynicism, mixed with grift, you have the inability to make policy that's good for the American people because you're too worried about your own career, and you lose whatever moral grounding you had. The thing is, that's in data, because you can see the metadata. You can see what I read about Scott Perry. You can read that congressional representatives were using encrypted apps because they were worried about the nuttery when January 6th happened, and they learned their lessons. And the thing that frightens me is that we're not seeing the communications behind the door. And if we can't see it, we can't track them. The Proud Boys and Oath Keepers aren't going to go back out and put it on Facebook again. I promise you that. Any white nationalist group, Western chauvinist group isn't going to do it. They're not going to do it. They learned their lesson. I don't. Thing is, I know phones so well that maybe we should have a tutorial on telephones and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Not that big of a deal. You guys aren't being tracked by Israelis or Russians, or ain't happening. But I can tell you what can happen. And you don't want that either. So anyhow, what a great night. I hope you did some. This wasn't the longest, right? I don't like to take all your time. But again, I think it is about educating yourself, understanding what's coming, understanding the same patterns. Don't be surprised by it, but get in front of it. And by getting in front of it, that means taking action, understanding what's happening, educating the people around you, getting behind the candidates for the midterms, looking at your local elections, and becoming very specific and directed in what you want to do as a mission. Don't wring your hands. Don't bang your hand against the wall. Don't scream into the sky. I've done all those things at one time in my life, right? Don't do any of that. Be angry, be directed, protect your family, right? Moms and dads. Moms, love your kids and know what they're looking at. And if you see any signs of that bullshit, nip it. I can't wait to meet all of you at some point. Thanks again for the night. I really appreciate you. Again, if there is another book that would really open your eyes, please get this one. Again, Christopher Wiley, as you can see it. And by the way, one of these nights when I do a Denver After Dark, which is a little bit more irreverent, we're going to get into Bigfoot, its complicated and cult behavior, and how that links to J6ers. And boy, does it. Boy, howdy. Anyway, guys, what a great night, I guess. Have a happy Friday night. Everybody, I wish I could actually shake each one of your hands for being on here. You guys are great. I really enjoy it. And I'll see you guys Sunday night at 9 p.m. at Denver After Dark. And if you would please, I'm not going to charge for this. So if you could please spread the word to your friends. I'd love to help them out, but I'd also just like more people that maybe want to do some real, no kidding, source data digging and go swing the baseball bat of justice. You know what I mean? In a good way, figuratively, not literally. But really, it is about the million-pound shit hammer of facts. And that's why I think we might have a chance, guys, because the future also talks about the overreach of those who are authoritarian or want to use violence to enact policy. Thank you guys so much. And you guys have a great night. Bless you all. And see you Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Denver After Dark.